My name is Madison and I'm 34 years old. If you met me at a party or a dinner table, you probably wouldn't remember much about me. I don't say that out of self-pity. It's just a fact I've grown used to. I'm the quiet one, the one who listens more than she talks, the one who shows up early and leaves without a fuss. I work as an internist at a small hospital in Oregon. It's not glamorous, but it's steady and it gives me a sense of purpose. I like structure. I like people who mean what they say. Maybe that's why I've always struggled with my family, because with them, everything has always felt like theater. And the star of the show has always been my younger sister, Sabrina. Sabrina is 3 years younger than me, and from the moment she could speak, it was like she had her own spotlight. She was loud, dramatic, endlessly charming in that way some people just are. While I was reading under trees or helping mom in the kitchen, Sabrina was dancing on tables, singing into hairbrushes, and making everyone laugh. Our parents adored her. To be fair, I don't think they ever meant to choose favorites. But favoritism doesn't always come in big, obvious gestures. Sometimes it's in the way people light up when one person enters a room. Sometimes it's in the excuses they make for bad behavior. The attention they give to meltdowns, the way they assume the quiet one is always fine. Growing up, I played the role of the good daughter, the responsible one. I got good grades, never missed curfew, kept my head down. When I got accepted to medical school, my dad shook my hand like I was a colleague. When Sabrina launched a lifestyle blog about minimalist fashion and started posting photos of herself in linen jumpsuits and oversized hats, my mom threw her a brunch to celebrate. I used to tell myself I didn't mind, that Sabrina needed more than I did, that I was stronger. And maybe I was for a while. But strength without acknowledgement eventually starts to feel like invisibility. The breaking point didn't come all at once. It built slowly, year after year, moment after moment. Little slights, big ones too. The holidays where my gifts were clearly last-minute afterthoughts. The birthdays where my cake was store-bought while Sabrina's were custom-made. The phone calls where I asked how they were, but no one asked about me. Still, I kept showing up. That's what we do, right? For family. We show up. Then 2 months before my 35th birthday, everything shifted. It started at a family dinner. Nothing fancy, just a small gathering at our parents' house. It was supposed to be my birthday dinner, just us, nothing big. I'd brought a bottle of wine I liked and a homemade pie. Mom had made her usual roast chicken, and I remember feeling a rare sense of peace as we sat down at the table. I was halfway through telling them about a patient who'd written me a thank you letter, the kind of thing I rarely shared, but I felt proud of it. And Mom was smiling politely when Sabrina suddenly said, "Sorry to interrupt, but I have something big to share." Everyone turned to her instantly, their eyes wide with anticipation. "I'm engaged," she squealed, holding up her left hand with a ring that practically glowed. He proposed last weekend in Big Sur. There was a moment of stunned silence, and then the table erupted. My mother gasped and clapped her hands. My father stood up to hug her. Even my uncle, who barely shows emotion, said, "Well, I'll be damned." And just like that, my story was forgotten. My name vanished from the conversation. I smiled, or at least I think I did. It's strange how the body can betray. You can go through the motions even when the heart is somewhere else entirely. I raised my glass. I said congratulations. I told her the ring was beautiful. That night, I drove home with the same pie I'd brought. Over barely touched and a hollow feeling in my chest I couldn't name. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. She was getting married. It was a big deal. Maybe next time someone would remember I existed. I didn't expect to be part of the wedding planning. I knew my role in the family. But I thought at the very least I'd be invited to the engagement party. Weeks passed. I heard nothing. No text, no email, no invite. I didn't want to be the one to ask. I didn't want to sound like I was fishing. So I waited. Then one Saturday morning, while scrolling through Facebook with a cup of coffee, I saw it. A perfectly lit photo of Sabrina standing beneath a floral archway holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by family and friends. My family. My parents were there beaming. My Aunt Nancy had flown in from Arizona. Even my cousin Kevin, who's allergic to leaving the house, was in the background holding a mimosa. Everyone was dressed in pastel colors, laughing, hugging. Everyone but me. For a full minute, I just stared. My heart thudded, but not from shock. From something older. something that had been waiting quietly inside me for years, biding its time. I put down my coffee. I took a breath. Then I picked up the phone and called my mom. She answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful. Madison. Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay? I didn't bother with small talk. I saw the photos, I said. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears. There was a pause. Oh, she said. Then nothing. You didn't invite me? There was another pause, this one longer, heavier. Well, she finally said, her voice shifting just slightly. We didn't think you'd want to come. You've always had feelings about Sabrina, and we didn't want any drama. Drama, I repeated. You know what I mean, she said lightly, as if brushing a crumb off her sleeve. You get quiet, withdrawn. It's her time, Madison. We just wanted things to be peaceful. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just said very calmly, then you won't mind missing my wedding either. Silence. A long one. Then she gave a nervous little laugh. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not, I said, and I hung up. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the daughter who smiled and nodded and made herself smaller so everyone else could shine. I was angry. And I wasn't going to pretend I wasn't anymore. After that call with my mom, I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything or scream into a pillow like they do in the movies. I just sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the floor. It was quiet, too quiet, like the kind of quiet that hums in your ears when everything else shuts off. I kept thinking about what she said. You've always had feelings about Sabrina. We just wanted things to be peaceful. It amazed me, honestly. The way people can twist your silence into hostility. The way they call you jealous when all you ever did was stay out of the way. That weekend, I stayed off social media. I didn't respond to texts from distant cousins asking, "Did you make it to the party? Hope you had fun." I didn't correct them. I didn't say a word. I just let the silence do its job. But inside, something had shifted. A quiet resolve. I'd been dating Joanne for almost 3 years. She's everything I never thought I'd find in a partner, gentle, thoughtful, wickedly funny, in that dry blink and you miss it way. She's also the first person who ever made me feel seen without needing to perform. We talked about marriage before, always in passing. Neither of us was in a rush. But after that call with my mom, something inside me clicked into place. Not out of spite, not to prove a point, but because I was done waiting for permission to live my life. The next weekend, I took Joanne on a quiet walk near our favorite lake. We were bundled in scarves and sipping hot chocolate from a thermos. I slipped a small silver ring into her mittened hand and asked simply, "Want to build something just ours?" She didn't cry. She just smiled, eyes shining, and said, "I thought you'd never ask." We decided to keep it simple. A small wedding just outside of town in a restored greenhouse that had been converted into an event space. It was full of natural light vines curling around the beams, the scent of the lavender lingering in the air. Perfect. Joanne's family was overjoyed. Her mother cried on the phone when we told her. Her brothers offered to help with the setup, the music, the food. I'd never known that kind of family warmth. It almost hurt to be embraced so fully. As we started putting the guest list together, I wrote the names slowly, carefully. Friends, colleagues, a few of Joanne's close cousins, and one person from my own family, Aunt Nancy. Nancy was my mom's older sister, and somehow, despite being related to the same people, she had always seen me. Really seen me. She sent me birthday cards with handwritten notes inside. She called on random Tuesdays just to check in. She never compared me to Sabrina. I called her one evening after dinner, nerves buzzing in my throat. "I'm getting married," I said, my voice trembling just a little. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "It's about time." I told her everything. About the engagement party, about the call with my mom, about the wedding plans. She didn't interrupt once. When I was finished, she exhaled slowly and said, "You have every right to want peace. You're not wrong." Then she added, "I'd be honored to be there." That moment felt like a thread had been stitched through the torn places inside me, one connection still intact. 3 weeks passed. We were knee-deep in planning sampling cakes, choosing flower arrangements, laughing over which song to walk down the aisle to when I got a text from Nancy. It was a photo. my wedding invitation sitting on her kitchen counter. The caption underneath said, "Your mom just saw this." That was all it said. But my stomach turned. I didn't have to wait long. That night, my phone lit up with call after call. First my mom, then my dad, then Sabrina. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts. "Elias, please. We didn't mean it that way." I sat there, the phone glowing in my hand, my heart beating in my ears. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. It was as if everything that had ever felt foggy between us had been wiped clean. They weren't calling because they'd realized they were wrong. They were calling because for once they were being left out. 3 days later, another text arrived. From my mom. "Please call me, please. This isn't right." The word cruel came next in a second message. "You're being cruel." That one stayed with me. Cruel. The word spun around my brain like a splinter. I heard it in my sleep. I heard it while brushing my teeth, while feeding the cat, while writing patient notes. Was I being cruel? Had I crossed some line I couldn't see? I talked to Joanne about it one night while we were folding laundry. "Am I overreacting?" I asked her. "Am I just broken?" She looked at me very gently and said, "No, you're setting a boundary. That doesn't make you broken. That makes you brave." And deep down, I knew she was right. For years, I'd allowed my family to write the narrative. That I was the jealous one, the distant one, the hard one. But I wasn't those things. I was just tired of pretending to be okay with being forgotten. The day after the cruel message, I muted the family group chat. It was blowing up with questions. Did anyone else know she was getting married? Why weren't we invited? Nancy, did you know? And then a message from Sabrina. "This is Petty Maddie. You're acting like a child." I stared at that one for a long time. Then I typed a single reply. "I'm simply respecting the boundaries you all set. You made it clear where I stood in this family. I'm not bitter. I'm just done pretending it doesn't hurt." And that was it. I didn't respond again. I turned off my phone and went to sleep with Joanne's hand in mine, and the kind of calm I hadn't felt in years. But of course, it didn't end there. 3 days later, Joanne and I were sitting at the florist's office, flipping through swatches of dried eucalyptus and pale garden roses when the door opened. And in walked my father. No warning, no text. He looked tired, older than I remembered. But his expression was the same as always, tight-lipped like a man holding back judgment. "Can we talk?" he asked. Joanne looked at me unsure. I nodded and told her I'd be fine. She stepped outside. He sat across from me at a small round table and folded his hands. "This has gone far enough, Madison," he said. "Has it?" I asked. "You've made your point. But punishing your mother like this, I didn't set out to punish anyone." I interrupted. "But you left me out of Sabrina's engagement party." "You didn't even tell me it was happening." "That was different," he said. "How?" I asked. "Because Sabrina needed a perfect day and you thought I'd ruin it." He looked away. "You made me feel like a threat to my own sister's happiness," I said. "Like I was poison. And you never once asked how that felt." He was quiet for a long time. "We thought you didn't care," he finally said. "You've always been independent." I smiled without warmth. That's code for, "We thought you'd take it and stay quiet." He didn't argue. "Can we come to the wedding?" he asked. I paused. I wanted to say yes. But then I remembered every birthday that had passed without a call, every milestone that was brushed off every time I'd been expected to disappear so Sabrina could shine. So I said, "Maybe this time you need to feel what it's like to be left out." He nodded slowly and left without another word. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought my father would go home, tell my mother that I wasn't changing my mind, and they'd at least have the decency to let it go quietly. But I should have known better. It started with whispers. A cousin texted me a blurry photo my wedding invitation still pinned to Aunt Nancy's fridge. The message said, "Thought you should know, your mom saw this last night." That same night, a Facebook post appeared on my timeline. My mother. It wasn't directed at me, it wasn't tagged, but it was public. Very public. The background was black, the text white, simple, dramatic. When your only daughter decides to exclude her family from the happiest day of her life, you wonder where you went wrong. We loved her, we raised her, and now she wants to erase us. I just hope she comes to her senses before it's too late. I sat there staring at it. I reread it 3 times. Erase us. That wasn't disappointment. That was performance. That was theater. That was control disguised as heartbreak. Within an hour, the post had over 100 likes and dozens of comments, mostly from extended relatives, old friends of the family people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some said, "I'm so sorry, Susan." Others commented things like, "Kids these days forget who raised them." One person even wrote, "Don't worry, she'll regret it someday." I didn't respond. I didn't even like the post. I just watched the narrative unfold the way it always did with me, as the cold, ungrateful daughter, and her as the devastated mother. It was like watching a play I hadn't auditioned for, but had somehow been cast in anyway. The next day, I stayed offline. The day after that, I got a knock at the door. It was a quiet knock, hesitant. Not like someone who wanted to be there, but someone who wasn't sure if they should be. I opened it to find Sabrina standing there holding a paper coffee cup in each hand. "Hi," she said. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and let her in. She looked different. Not in any huge way. Her makeup was still perfect, her hair was still styled. But her eyes, something about them looked smaller, like they'd lost some of their shine. She hovered near the couch, unsure of where to sit. "I brought you coffee," she said, offering one cup. I didn't know what kind you liked anymore, so I just got both. I took one just to give her hand something else to do. She sat finally perching on the edge of the couch like she might bolt at any moment. "I didn't know," she said, after a moment. "About the engagement party, that Mom didn't invite you." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't notice I wasn't there?" She looked down at her hands. "I figured, I don't know, that you were busy or that maybe you just didn't want to come. You've never been into parties." I laughed once, dry. "Right, just like I wasn't into birthdays or holidays or family dinners. Just not my thing, right?" She winced. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "You hijacked my birthday dinner to announce your engagement. Every Christmas, every gathering, you turn it into the Sabrina show. And I've never said a word. Not until now." She pressed her lips together. "I didn't mean to make everything about me," she said. "I guess it's just how Mom and Dad are. They always made me the center of things. I didn't realize how much that cost you." I crossed my arms. "That doesn't make it okay." "I know," she said. "I'm not asking you to forget everything. I don't want to miss your wedding." She looked up at me then, and for the first time in years, I saw my sister. Not the Instagram version, not the curated one, but the girl I used to build pillow forts with. The girl who cried when I scraped my knee and offered me the last slice of cake on my 10th birthday. "I'm not asking you to invite Mom or Dad," she said. "Not even the cousins. Just me. Please." I didn't answer right away, because right then my phone buzzed on the counter. I walked over and glanced at the screen. Another Facebook notification. Another post. It was from my mother. She'd posted a photo collage of me childhood pictures my college graduation. Even a blurry picture of me with Joanne at a brunch from 2 years ago. The caption read, "She was our miracle, our firstborn, our quiet light." I don't know where I went wrong. I miss her more than she'll ever know. All I wanted was to be part of her joy. I turned the screen toward Sabrina. She posted this today. Her face fell. She said she wouldn't, she whispered. She told me she'd let me try. I stared at the phone. She doesn't care what you say. She never has. That wasn't fair, maybe, but it was true in that moment. I sat down again. Sabrina looked tired. Her shoulders slumped. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. "She's not upset about missing the wedding," she said finally. "She's upset that she doesn't get to show off at it." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. "She wants to look like the grieving mother," she added, "like you abandoned her for no reason." I stared at the wall for a long time. The post still burned in the back of my mind. The photos, the selective memory, the framing of me as someone lost and ungrateful. "What do you want to do?" Sabrina asked. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because in that moment, something new took root inside me. Not anger, not spite, strategy. If she wanted to control the story, I'd write a new one. I stood and walked over to the desk where our guest list sat half-finished beside a stack of RSVP cards. I picked up a pen. Sabrina watched me silent. I'm changing the list, I said. To what you? Aunt Nancy. Lily. I paused. That's it. Her eyes widened. You're serious. You're the only one who came to talk in person, I said. The only one who owned up to what's been going on. You don't deserve to be punished for their choices. Sabrina blinked quickly, her eyes glossy. Thank you, she whispered. But I cut in, holding up a hand. This doesn't mean we're all good. This isn't a magical reunion. It's one small step. I get that she said standing. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you years ago. I didn't respond, just nodded. She let herself out. That night I showed Joanne the Facebook post. She read it quietly, then looked at me. Do you want to respond? I do, I said. But not online. I want to respond in person. On our terms. What are you thinking? I smiled. If they're going to paint me as the villain for taking control of my life, maybe it's time I embrace the role. Joanne raised an eyebrow. I took her hand. Let's make this wedding unforgettable. The morning of the wedding arrived with an eerie sense of calm. The sky was wide and blue, the air warm enough to be comfortable, but not enough to make anyone sweat. There was a stillness in the garden that reminded me of childhood mornings when I used to wake before anyone else and sit in the backyard with a book while the world slowly stretched into wakefulness. We'd chosen to hold the ceremony under the open rafters of the greenhouse garden. The arch was wrapped in ivy and wild roses, with hanging glass lanterns catching the early afternoon light. A small band played soft piano instrumentals, and everything smelled like lavender and citrus. Joanne was inside with her sister and her mother getting ready. I stood out front, not pacing, not worrying, just still. I watched the guests trickle in slowly, all people who had shown up for us over and over again. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Friends, colleagues, neighbors who felt like family. Then I saw her. Aunt Nancy arrived first. She wore a flowing navy dress and had a tissue already balled up in her hand. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Your parents are losing their minds, she whispered in my ear with a mischievous smile. Your mom threw her phone across the room this morning. I couldn't help but let out a soft laugh. Maybe now she knows what that kind of silence feels like, I said. Nancy nodded gently. Today is your day, Maddie. No one else gets to touch that. Then Sabrina arrived. She wore a simple pale blue dress, no sequins, no statement jewelry, just a soft look of quiet respect. Her hair was pulled back and her makeup was barely noticeable. When she saw me, she didn't rush over or make a scene. She just walked calmly and gave me a small, genuine hug. I'm glad you're here, I said. I'm glad you let me be, she whispered. She hugged Joanne next, even held her hands, and told her she looked beautiful. It was the first time I'd ever seen them exchange more than a polite hello. During the ceremony, Sabrina sat beside Aunt Nancy and Lily. She didn't post photos, didn't make comments during the vows. She just sat still and silent, her hands folded in her lap, watching, respecting. And for the first time, I saw her not as the star of the family, or the attention seeker, or even the girl who had always gotten more. I saw her as my sister. Just my sister. When Joanne walked down the aisle, I felt everything else fall away. The noise, the drama, the Facebook posts, all of it disappeared. She looked like home. That's the only way I can describe it. Like the version of peace I'd been searching for in every room I'd ever walked into and never quite found until her. Our vows were simple, honest, no grand poetry or dramatic promises. Just two people who had found something worth protecting. We kissed under the soft archway as the wind moved the vines gently behind us. And when we turned around to face the people in our lives, the ones we had chosen and who had chosen us back, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not pride, not even vindication, but a quiet, profound joy. At the reception, people laughed and danced and toasted. The food was homemade, served family style. We didn't hire a planner. Our friends helped us string the lights the night before. It wasn't elegant in the traditional sense, but it was beautiful. Somewhere between the first dance and the cutting of the cake, one of the waiters approached me with a small envelope. "This was just delivered at the front gate," he said. "Someone said it was urgent." I took it carefully. My name was written on the front in looping cursive I hadn't seen in years. It was my mother's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of cream stationery. Madison. We saw the photos. We saw the post. We know we've hurt you more than we ever realized. I don't expect you to forgive us, but I want you to know that you were never unwanted. We were just too blind, too wrapped up in Sabrina's noise and our own stories to see the quiet strength you carried every day. I made mistakes. I made a lot of them. But today, seeing what you've built, I've never been more proud of you. I hope one day you'll let us try again. Love, Mom. I read the note once, then again. My hands were shaking. Joanne saw me from across the room and came over. I handed it to her without a word. She read it slowly, then looked up at me. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I stared out at the garden, the warm light filtering through the trees, the laughter of people I loved, the sound of soft music drifting between the leaves. "I don't know yet," I said. And it was true. The letter didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't undo years of birthdays forgotten or moments stolen, or being told even in silence that I mattered less. But it was something. It was a start. And right now, I didn't need to decide what came next. I just needed to be present, in this moment, on this day that I had built from the pieces they once overlooked. Later, as the sun dipped lower and the garden glowed golden, I found Sabrina standing near the dessert table eating a mini lemon tart. "Mom sent a letter," I said. She didn't ask what it said. She just nodded like she already knew. "She's trying in her own way," she said. "Even if it's too late." "It's not too late," I replied. "But it's going to take time." She smiled gently. "I'll wait," she said. And somehow, I believed her. That night, as we drove away from the venue with tin cans clinking behind the car and wildflowers in the back seat, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because everything was fixed, but because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. After the ceremony and the reception, after the cake had been cut and the champagne glasses emptied, Joanne and I stepped outside into the evening air. The sky was just starting to darken that rich blue hour, when everything softens and glows. The guests had mostly gone home. The lights were still strung up, twinkling above the tables like stars pulled just a little closer. Someone had forgotten their jacket on the back of a chair. A half-full wine glass sat abandoned near the dessert table. It was quiet again. The same kind of quiet I'd felt the morning of the wedding. But this time it didn't feel empty. It felt full. Joanne reached for my hand, and I leaned into her shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "We really did. I didn't need a grand gesture. I didn't need fireworks or a choreographed dance or a viral video. I just needed that moment. Us, together, in the peace we had chosen." We spent the night at a small bed and breakfast nearby, the kind with creaky floors and floral wallpaper, the kind that serves fresh cinnamon rolls in the morning and leaves handwritten notes on the pillows. The next few days were a blur of packing and laughing and squeezing in last-minute errands before the honeymoon. We flew out to New Mexico to a quiet adobe-style inn tucked into the desert hills. No phones, no Wi-Fi, just sunrises, long walks, and the sound of our breathing sinking as we fell asleep each night. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't watching my life from the sidelines. I was living it. 2 weeks later, we returned home to stacks of mail, a dying houseplant, and a few too many missed packages. I didn't check social media. I didn't open the family group chat. I wasn't ready. I still wasn't sure what to do with the letter from my mom. It sat on my nightstand, neatly folded, its edges already softening from how many times I'd read it. Some days it made me angry. Other days it made me cry. But most days it just reminded me of how long I'd waited to be seen. A week after we got back, I was sitting in the living room flipping through the wedding album Joanne had put together. She'd chosen the photos carefully, no stage portraits or forced smiles, just moments. Real ones. Me fixing a fallen flower in her hair, her laughing mid-toast, Aunt Nancy tearing up as I walked down the aisle. I smiled at every page, until the doorbell rang. Joanne was in the kitchen. I heard her pause, then the soft murmur of voices. Footsteps. Then she appeared in the hallway looking at me gently. "There's someone here for you," she said. I stood slowly unsure. When I walked out, my breath caught in my throat. My mother stood in the entryway. She wasn't wearing her usual pressed slacks or flowy scarves. No makeup. Just jeans, a cardigan, and a tired expression that made her look smaller than I remembered. In her hands was a small wooden box. "Hi," she said. I didn't respond, not right away. She held out the box like it was something fragile. And maybe it was. "I found this in the attic," she said. "Last week I thought it was gone. I was going to throw it out, but I couldn't." I took the box slowly. It was old with a loose hinge and a faded sticker on the corner. When I opened it, something in my chest shifted. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Me as a baby in a yellow bonnet. Me holding my first science fair ribbon. A Mother's Day card I had made in kindergarten. The crayon words crooked and misspelled, but heartfelt. There were letters I'd written to Santa. A drawing of our house with stick figures labeled Mom, Dad, Sabrina. And in tiny letters, me. Tears stung my eyes before I even realized they were coming. "I didn't know you kept these," I said. "I almost didn't," she whispered. "But I couldn't throw them away, even when I was angry, even when I didn't understand you. I kept them because I loved you." I looked at her, really looked at her. This wasn't the polished woman from Facebook posts. This was a mother stripped bare holding out a piece of the past like an apology she didn't know how to speak. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, "but I want to try, if you'll let me." I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. But I didn't close the door either. Instead, I nodded. Just once. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. Joanne came into the hallway, then holding a cup of tea she'd prepared without asking. She handed it to my mom, and for a moment the three of us stood there awkward and quiet. But it wasn't painful. It was honest. Later that evening, after she left, I sat on the floor with the box open beside me. I sifted through each photo slowly, like flipping through old dreams. Joanne sat beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," I said. It would take time, maybe months, maybe years. Maybe we'd never be what we were supposed to be. But at least now we weren't pretending. At least now there was a beginning. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd said nothing. If I'd just gone on pretending that it didn't bother me. If I'd sent Sabrina a gift for her engagement party, left a polite comment on the Facebook post, and swallowed the ache like I always had. I wonder if anyone would have noticed. And I think that's what hurt the most. Not being left out. Not even the assumptions they made about me. But the quiet realization that for years I could disappear and no one would even blink. That kind of silence. It eats at you, slowly, quietly, until one day you stop recognizing your own voice when it finally tries to speak. This wedding wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about choosing myself for the first time. Out loud, without apology. For years, I thought setting boundaries would make me cruel. That saying no would make me the bad daughter. That putting myself first was selfish. But it's not selfish to want to be treated with care. It's not unkind to expect respect. It's not dramatic to ask that your presence be valued. What I've learned, what I'm still learning, is that love without recognition is just proximity. That showing up for others doesn't mean letting them step over you to get to someone louder. That silence is not always grace. It can be grief dressed up as politeness. My mother and I are not healed, not entirely. We don't talk every day. Sometimes weeks go by. But when she showed up at my door with that box of memories, she handed me more than photos. She handed me a thread, one that might with time be tied into something new. Not the version of us I used to wish for, but a quieter one, realer, built on truth instead of performance. And Sabrina, she still shines. That's who she is. And maybe finally, that doesn't have to dim my light. There is room for both of us. It just took me 34 years to believe it. To anyone who's ever felt like the afterthought in their own family, to anyone who's ever made themselves smaller just to keep the peace, to anyone who's ever questioned if maybe it was all in their head, I see you. I was you. And you don't have to stay quiet to be good. You don't have to disappear to be loved. You are not dramatic for needing to be treated with care. Sometimes healing doesn't look like a tearful reunion. Sometimes it's a handwritten letter and a box of old photographs. Sometimes it's a wedding with 50 people and no approval from the people you once begged to notice you. And sometimes it's just finally saying out loud, I deserve better, and then building a life that reflects that truth. One moment at a time, one boundary at a time, one breath at a time.